All right, so this is the project we are going to be working on. What we're working on before is really taking a lot of time, and we need to apply other JavaScript. I hope you can hear me. So today we are going to be working on this.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Today we are going to be working or start working on this age calculator, and as you can see here, it's just a basic sites where you can calculate your age based on the day, the month, and the year that you input inside the box. And as you can see, this thing is using some of the stuff that we've talked about before, which is validation. Because you don't expect people to put the correct stuff. You always assume that some people somewhere, when they want to use this application, they are going to put nonsense in your box where you are expecting them to type. And since you don't trust user, you should always validate whatever they are typing, because there is nothing like day 98. It's not possible that you are not saying you are born in the highest day that we have is 31. And again, to it have the month that you have to use 31. You know, like February now, you can't use 20. Um, you can use 31 there, and some months they are 30. So all those checking needs to be done, and based on that, if everything is okay inside the box, then we are going to calculate their age based on the details that they supply inside the box. So this person now was born on the 24th of 9th 1984, and as you can see, at that time the person is 38 years old, 3 months, and 26 days. So we should be able to do something like this, which require JavaScript, because whatever the user type inside this box, we need to be able to have access to it. And based on the data we have, we should be able to calculate their year, the month, and the days based on the data that was supplied to us. And this is the desktop design, because the mobile is actually different. It's just a little different. It's just this arrow stuff that is different there. So every other thing remain the same. So on desktop, the arrow is by this side, and as you can see there, but on mobile, it's actually at the center. So we need to see how to create the stuff. So today, we're going to start with our UI, and in the next class, we start with the JavaScript integration. What do we want to do? First, we need to have our layout or the structure. Then after the structure, we need to style it. Then after we are done with the styling, then we enter the JavaScript phase, where we are going to start dealing with interaction. So as the user is inputting their details inside the box, and once they click on this button here, it's going to do the calculation for us. So which means here we need to have the form, if you want to use form, but which is something I'll be using. So here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have this layout where you have the body. Inside the body, we're going to have this main item, because it's the one that is going to hold everything. So inside this main item, I'm going to have the form. So all these things, I'm going to put them in a form, because I want the user to be able to press enter on their keyboard to submit the details. So if you type something and you press enter on your keyboard, it's going to submit. Or if you click on this button, it's still going to do the same thing. So just like the way we handled our form last time, you see the same way we are going to do with this one. The difference is just the design, but the same functionality later on when we are dealing with JavaScript. Then apart from this, we're going to have this section that is holding the year, the months, and the days. And if you look at it, this text is split into two parts. You have the parts with this color, and you have the parts without this color. So which means here, this text is divided into two. So we have the span. We're going to be using span for this so that we can style it separately from this particular text that we have here. And that's the same thing is going to happen here too. You have the H1 or H2, or depending on whatever you want to use. Then inside it, we're going to have the span to represent this one, because we want to change the color. I don't need to be explaining this one because you know about it already, but this is how the layout is going to go. So the layout, we have the body. Inside the body, we're going to have this container that is going to hold everything together. So inside this container, we're going to have our form, which is going to hold all this information together. And why am I putting it inside form? Is because I want the user to be able to press enter on their keyboard to submit the form without me handling any, or without me adding JavaScript to do that. Because if you want the user to be able to press enter to submit the stuff and you're not using form, it will not work out of the box. You have to wire the JavaScript by talking to the button that once the user press, or by listening for the enter key. And once you listen for the enter key, then it's going to carry out action. You're going to see how to do all those things later on when we're dealing with the keyboard. So after this project, we're going to build a project that deal with sound that you have to press for your key. So once you press the key, it's going to play the correct sound. So we're going to see how we can attach events that deal with keyboard. But for now, we're not going to do that. We're going to use form to undo this one. And again, we're going to have another container here, which is going to contain the year, the month, and the day, like this. And inside it too, I told you each one of them is a text. But inside this text, we are going to have a span in order for us to be able to style the starting point of it, because this is how it looks like when you've already filled and there is no problem. But when the user has not filled, as you can see, this is what is going to be there, the iPhone. This is what we're going to have by default, but JavaScript will be the one that will be replacing all this iPhone later on based on the details that the user type inside the box. So let's start with the design. So inside the body, we need to have this container, which I'm using the main element, which is this entire white box. And inside this white box, we have two extra container inside it. And the two extra container that we have, I said I will be using form to represent the first one. So I didn't need to put action because we are going to add JavaScript to it later on. Then after this, we're going to have section. So what is this section? That's where we're going to have the years, the months, and the day. And as you can see, whether you type something correctly or not, the years, the months, and day will always be there. The only thing that is not showing is the actual data. So here, I'll be using H2 because the text is really big and it's bold. So I want to use H2. And inside this H2, we're going to have the span. So inside the span, we're going to have this double hyphen like this. And after the hyphen, then we have the years. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. Before I do that, I want to give them a class. So this one is going to be years, so that we can be able to target it from JavaScript later on easily, because we are still going to use the same H2 for the month and the day. So in order for us to differentiate one H2 from the other, we are attaching a class, or you can give it ID depending on any one of them you want to use. So this one now, the ID of this H2 is going to be month. So when we want to target it later on in JavaScript, we just use ID to pick it up. So here too, I'll change this one to ID and it's going to be date. And as you can see, I'm using the corresponding name to represent them. So this is month and this is year. It's not a must, but it's always good that you use a name that is describing what you are trying to do at that place. Without you seeing the UI later on, when you are reading the code, you already know what this H2 is all about based on the ID that you have on it and so forth like that. So that's the advantage of using correct name there like that. So this part is simple. That's why I'm doing it first. I'm not doing this form yet because this part is really, really simple. What do we have there? It's just the text. And each one of the text, you have the hyphen. And why am I putting it inside the span? Because we want to style it differently from the other text. And again, too, we'll be able to have access to it in JavaScript later on because we need to be changing this value. So if the user input the correct stuff inside the form and they press this button to submit, you see that it will update the hyphen to the correct data that is going to be there. So we need a way of getting the data here without touching the year. If you still want to touch the year, but you have to do a lot of work from JavaScript, which is bad. So That's why I'm doing it in the simple way like this. So we are done with this section. The one we need to focus on now is this area here, because this is where the major work is. This is where the major work is. As you can see, when there is no error in the stuff, as you can see, by default, this is how everything will look like. But if you look at this one to judge, you see that you are going to be missing out, because there is something that is going to come under it when there is error. So this is how it's going to be like anytime there is error for each one of them. So which means this box now, we need to create them. So this is one box on its own, this is another box on its own, and this is another one on its own. And all of them, they are in a particular container, because if you want to put them side by side, you need to have a container which you are going to display as flex, and you see that it will place them side by side. Not by default, when you create a container, it will place them on top of each other. But we need something like this in order for us to be able to put it together, or to put the design together like this. So let me zoom out or this thing so that I can show everything again. So here we have our form. So this is going to be the form. Inside this form, we have the container at the top here. So inside this container, we're going to have these three groups. So the groups for the day, the groups for the month, and the groups for the year. And apart from that one, we're going to have another group again here that is holding this line and the button. So this is what we need to do. This is the layout we need to have inside our form if you want this thing to put your CSS together the way it's supposed to be. So in order for you to have this kind of design, we already have our form. I'm going over it again. We already have our form. So inside the form, we're going to have two sections there. We're going to have the section for all the inputs, and we're going to have the section for this button and the line. So at the top here, we're going to have this group. Again, we're going to have this group, and we're going to have this group. And inside each one of the group, as you can see, we have the label, we have the input, and we have the error message if there is any error message. And this error message is going to be coming out, or it's going to be added by JavaScript automatically, just like the way we did it last time there. That's the same way it's going to be here. But I'm going to design everything down first, then JavaScript will not be the one that will be adding or removing the stuff. But when you are doing designing, when you are designing the stuff, you put all the elements first so that you see that they are being displayed correctly. Then when you are done with the design, then the one that is not supposed to show, you remove them. Then you now be creating it later on from JavaScript, just like the way we did for the last project that we handled there. So let me go back. So this is what we need to have inside our form. So this is what we need to have. So inside the form, I'm going to have this group, which I'm going to give it this section. So inside this place, what do we need to have? We need to have each group there like this. So we're going to have I'm going to call it the form group. And inside this form group, we need to have the label. Label for what? So for day, and this day like this. So the text there is day. And after the label, let me expand this thing very well. So after the label, what do we have? We have the input. And if you look at the input, it has placeholder of this DD. So this thing is a number. So I'm going to put it as text like that. But there's some stuff we need to do later on, because we don't want the user to type text inside our box. But for now, I will leave it as text. So the next thing we need to have is the placeholder, which is DD like this. And after this particular input, what do we need to have? We need to have this error message here. So I told you we are designing right now, not that it's working the way it's supposed to be. So here I'm going to have the p tag. Inside this p tag, I will just put this feed is required. It's just for styling purpose there. So later on, we are going to remove it, and JavaScript will be the one that will be creating this element on the fly based on whether this feed is valid or not. But for now, since we want to design, that's why I have it like this. So this group now is for the day, which we can add comments. So this is day. I'm going to add a comment there like this. So after this one, what do we need to have? So I will just duplicate this one because I don't want to type it again, just waste of time. So the next one is going to be months like this. So this one's supposed to be small m. Then this is supposed to have ID. ID should be there. And for this one, ID should be a month. And why am I creating ID and 4 here? It's because I want to connect them together. And what do I mean by that? You go to the page now, and if you click on the label, you see that it's going to trigger. Let me expand this thing. Why do I have it like this? So let me expand this thing. So as you can see here, I have this box. So if I click on the label, as you can see, it triggered the box. If I click on the month, as you can see, it triggered the box. And that's the reason why we have this 4 on the label and we have the ID, which is something that I explained already. So I don't need to be going into that again. So again, I think they have the same text. Yeah, so this field is required. The same type of message. And lastly, we have the one for the year. So lastly, we have the one for the year. This is supposed to select the case. Yeah, so year. And this one is going to be year like that. And this one is going to be Y 4 places. So save it and go back to the page. We should have all these elements. But by the time we are done with our styling, everything's supposed to look like this. But there's no styling yet. So we still have the basic HTML content like this. So what next do we need to do? We need to work on this side. So we need to work on this particular part here, which is another section on its own. So the first section that we have is to hold the day, the month, and the year, which is everything. So apart from this section, we need to have another one. And this one here, that's where we're going to have this line and where we're going to have this arrow stuff. And I think this thing is image that we can pick up from the design file. So let me go back to the design file. As you can see, we have assets. Under the asset, the font is even given to us, so we are going to include the font too. So let me copy all the assets that we have there. So expand and just pick the asset directly under the project that we're working on. Then we can access anything that we want there like that. Why is it not copy my assets? Take copy to the place. Okay, now back. So now under the assets, we have the images, and as you can see, we have this arrow, the icon. Does it have background? I don't know. Let me just put it there for now. So inside this place, how do we get that line? We've talked about this one right from day one. You can use our HR to get that line, or you can do it yourself. But instead of me doing it myself, I can use HR to generate the line there. And I want to be giving all these section classes because I don't want to be doing some crazy selector in CSS there. So this one should be form group wrapper like this. So this one is one that is wrapping all the form groups, or instead of me doing like that, I can just add S in front of it. So form groups, which is the one that is now grouping all the groups. And for this one down here, so I'm going to give it a class and actions like this. So I'm giving it action. It's not a must that you name it like this. You can name it anyhow you want, but when you are dealing with it in CSS, you need to target it according to that. And again, this one too, I'm going to give it a class. So for this one, I'm going to give it results like this. So this is where we're going to see all our results. So now I can target them from CSS without me mentioning section that is inside form or the one that is not inside form. So I don't need to do too much of a selector because the class is clear and everything will be selected one by one. So inside this place, we need to have button. And this button, by default, any button that you have inside your form is going to act as submit. But it's always good that you put the type there, submit. But by default, any button that you have inside form is going to be submit by default unless you change the type. And inside this place, we need to pull our image. So where is the image coming from? It's coming from assets, the images, and this icon arrow like this. Then save the code. And once this thing is saved, as you can see, we now have that arrow. But later on, we're going to turn this our button to circle. As you can see, the button is circled, and again, so the color of the button, the background will change when you're on top of it. So let me see, I think it's when it is overstate. So this is, yeah, as you can see, when you're on top of the button, this is the color, but when you're not on top, it's going to maintain this the color that we have here. And again, for the C2, they are telling us that anytime we are inside this box, the line should be this particular purple color or so, like that. So we need to make sure that our design looks like what the prototype is expecting from us. So now we are done with all the necessary HTML that we need to have on the page. The only thing we need to do now is to put everything together and make sure that it looks like what we have here. And how do we do that? We need to apply our style. So on the page, let me include my CSS, so the link CSS, which is going to connect to my CSS. And what do you need to do with your CSS? You do all your basic setting that you need. First of all, what do we need? We need to do some basic resets, so which I'm going to do the asterisk, so the P0, because the font that we have on the page there, I don't want it. The design we're working with already give us the fonts that we need to use. And the font, we have it locally. We're not connecting to online, so we need to connect to this font file. But this file is really too much. There is a lot of things there. We have to connect to all of them. Or I can just connect to one of them, because there is a lot. There is one for bold. Anywhere you need bold, there is extra bold, bold italic. I think we're going to connect to all of them. I'm going to show you how to do that. So right now, we need to mention our box sizing, which is going to be border box, so that everything can be sized correctly when you are using padding and margin. So now the next thing we need to do is the font. You can see it's still using the default browser font. So how do we connect to this our local fonts that we download here? You don't need to start installing them, because when you are dealing with the project, you can't just go online and download font and start installing it on your own system. People that will use the site will not be using your system. So you need to talk to the browser that you already have the font in your project. You just want the browser to download it for that particular user, and it's going to use everything. So instead of you going to online to connect to Google Fonts and copy the link, we can do it by ourselves too, if you already have the font as part of your project, not on your system. I'm not talking about the one you install your system. You can see the files are here. What we need to do now is to point the browser to all these fonts, that anytime someone is using popping and they want bold, this is the font you are going to use. Anytime someone is using popping and they want bold italic, this is the one you are going to use. That's what we need to talk to the browser. And how do you talk to the browser to pick all these fonts? So at the top here, we can define what we call at font space rules. So we can define, why is this in using, let me change my keyboard back to US. So what we can do here is to define at font face. As you can see here, these are the two major things that you need to supply to it. What is the name that you want to use for your font? So which means in your code, which name do you want to be using? So anytime you now mention this font, then where do you want the browser to get it from? That's the URL, which way you are going to point to where your font is. If it's online, you can do it here, but we already have it locally. So if you are pointing to Google Font, this is what it's going to do for you behind the scene. But since we are not pointing to Google Font, we have our own local font in the project, then we need to set it up ourselves by doing this font face. So what is the name of the font we want to use? So here I'm going to call the font Poppins. So in my code, anywhere I'm calling Poppins, this is where you are going to get that Poppins. And what's the Poppin that I want to connect to by default? I want to connect to this regular one. And where am I going to get it? So we have assets, it's inside the font, and we have this regular. So anytime you mention Poppins as a font, then the browser will come here to look for that font and it will pick it up and do the necessary stuff it needs to do. So which means here now, if I use a font family like this, font family, and I'm using Poppins. So what the browser will do is that look for where Poppin is coming from, and we've already defined the face here. So the rules that is going to use to look for the font. So since we specify the source, so once you see Poppin here, it will come here and look at the URL and it will pick the font up there. And once this thing is saved there, as you can see, it's going to pick it up. But if you look at this bold, it's not really that bold like the original design. Look at their own Y. Look at our own Y. Even though it is bold, but it is still tiny. That thing is not big. It's because we are only connected to this regular one. And if you look at it, there is some other one we can use when it is bold or when it is extra bold. That means when I'm using like around that 800 or 900, whatever stuff. So how do we talk to this font face that anytime someone is using a font weight of a particular number, for example, anytime someone uses a font weight of 700, this is another font we want it to load. So we can define the weight that this font is there for. So these are just the basic stuff you can supply, but you can supply more than that by giving it more rules. So here again, anytime someone mentions Poppins as a font family in this project, and they are using font weight for that particular place of 700, what did I want to do? I don't want this regular again. The one I want is for this bold. So now it will abandon this one. Since we are now mentioning font weight of 700, it will come and pick this one. It's still the same name, but the weight now is here at 700. If you don't mention the weight, it's default to 400. So which means here that I did not mention it, what is just there is just normal 400 like this. Or it's going to use it for all of them, all the weights. So whether you say 400 or whatever stuff, it's going to use this single one. But right now, this particular one, this particular Poppins, anytime someone mentions Poppins in their selector and they put the weight of 700, we don't want the browser to use this one, because right now that's what the browser is using here. The font weight right now is 700 because we use H2. And since it's H2, the font weight is going to be 700 by default. The browser is setting it up. If you check the code that the browser will be using there, as you can see, it's going to be bold. So font weight is bold. And what is bold? Bold is just 700. If you check it, there like that, where is the font? Can you see? It's 700. And that's why it's bold like this. But it's still using this, our particular Poppins of regular. And that's why that text is not thick like the design that we're working on. So in order for it to be thick or to have that particular stuff, now we change the weight and we supply the font that is going to use. Oh yeah, anytime it's 700, I can pick the one that is going to match it. So what we just need to do here is to supply the font we want to use for that particular one, which is going to be this bold. So anytime we are using Poppins as our font family, and at that place the font weight is 700, this is the one it's going to use. But if it's not 700, then this is the one it's going to use for the other one. Whether you mention 100, 200, 300, and so on like that, this is the regular it will always use. But once the font weight is 700, it will switch to this Poppin bold. And once you save now, can you see there's a difference in between the Y that we have before and the new one now? Because we are telling it to load this bold. If I disable this one, can you see the Y? The Y is tiny. But now if I activate this one back, you see that it will switch from here into this one. If I don't want to use this one too, I just want to use that extra bold. If I want, I can just pass it at anytime they use font weight of 700, this is what I want to use. If I save it now, as you can see, the Y is going to tick because it's picking this Poppin of extra bold, not the one of regular. But if you don't give it like this, it doesn't just pick it though, it's only what you define, that's what it's going to use. And since it's using regular, that's why the Y is like this, because Y, the regular cannot be thicker than that, so it will not go more than that. But now I'm switching it to extra bold, and you see that it pick it up like this. And I think these are the only thing. Well, no, let me use this extra bold here. So let me call this one bold. So I will use bold for the not extra bold. So I'm going to use bold. So now if you mention 800, it's still the same thing. So anywhere you mention 800 as a font weight, then that one will now be extra bold. So when you mention 800 as the font weight, it will use extra bold. When you mention 700, it will use popping bold. But if you don't mention any font or every other font weight that is not 700 and 800, this is what it's going to use. And if you want to deal with italics too, as you can see, the font is there too. You can mention what it's going to use when it is in italic. So how do you do that? So when it is a font weight is 700 and the font style, because that's where you can change the weight, so it is italic. So when it is italic, when it is not italic, just use normal bold. But when you are not having italic there too, then that one too is going to have bold italic. And you can do the same thing for this 800 too, because all the font has given to us. You just need to define them. So when the font weight is 800 and the font style is italics there like that, so I want this one too to be extra bold italic. And that's the reason why you are giving all these fonts. So you set them up. How do you set it up? Set the font base, then you pass the name of the font that you want to use in your code. Then when that font is used, then where do you want to get it from? So you pass the source. But if you want this thing to be attached to a particular weight, then you mention the weight. If you want it to be attached to a particular style, you mention the style and you load the correct font that you want there. So here now, we have our local own font that we are loading, and this thing will always work on every system that is visiting this site, because the browser will come into this folder and it will download the font for them. Like it will install it for that particular page that you're working on or the particular project you're working on. Not that it will just install it on their system directly. The browser will use it for this particular project because that's the only time we are loading it. And once you leave the project, then that's the end of it. So like that. And this is how you always do when you have your font that it's custom and it's not on Google and you've already downloaded them. What do? You copy it into your project and you connect to them by using this font face. This is what Google is doing behind the scene for you when you connect to Google Font. So the link that you are connecting to, this is what they are doing behind the scene. But instead of you doing it, Google has already set up everything. You only just to connect to the link and the browser knows how to figure out to pick all those information. But since we already have the font and we are not connected to Google, then we are doing it by ourselves. Now in our code, we can use poppins anytime we need it, which is what I did here. And don't forget, it's always good that you put the family at the end, because when the user will be using this thing later on, their network might be slow. So to download this font might take time. So we want this thing to be using sans serif. And once the stuff is done downloading, then it will switch back to popping. But since the scene is on my system and I'm not connecting to any internet to download it, so it's really fast. Even there is a subtle difference there, but it's still fast compared to when you deploy this application later on that the user have to go there with their browser. So it will take time to load depending on their network speed there. So and you don't want the thing to be using the default one that the browser have there, because while this thing is downloading your font, it will be using the default one. When it's done downloading, that's when it will switch. And we don't want it to be using that serif, so we want it to use the sans serif for us based on the system where the user is using this thing from. So now we have all these heights, all the fonts set up. So anytime we need them, we just need to call it and it's going to work. For example, here I can just call my H2 and give it a font weight of 800 like this, and you see that it will switch to the one of 800. Now it's not using 700 again, it's now using the one of 800. So if I remove it from 800 and change it to 400, you see that it will go back to the regular one, which is the one at the top, because that's what it's going to use by default. Whether you use 100, 200, 300, this is what it's always going to use, because we did not mention any weight. So anyone that did not mention weight for, it will always use it for the other font that you did not mention the weight. And if I return it back to 800, you see that it will pick this one. And if I want the one for italics too, I just need to apply that style. So the font style then is going to be italic. And here too, it will now pick this last one here like that. And that's what we just did. You can see it's still bold, it's still thick, because it's using this extra bold italic version of it like that. But assuming we don't have this, it will be using this one here, which might not give you what you are expecting like that. You can see. So now going back there, we get what we are expecting, like that. So whatever definition you define here, that's what is going to follow anytime you are using it. So we're using the poppins, it sees it. We are using a font weight of 800, yes. We are using font style of italic, okay. This is the style that you want to use for your font, not this one, because this one now includes style. It includes the font style. And if I remove this one, then it did not contain anything like italic, so it will pick this one because the weight is 800. And if it's 700, this is what it will pick. And if it have font style of italic, this is the one it will pick, and so forth like that. So that's what Google is doing behind the scene for you. Your own is just to connect to the link. So yeah, the next thing we need to set up is our color. What is time? There's no time again. I have another class. We have another class soon. But let us set up all this necessary CSS. So going back into this project, let me open the style guide because I don't want to start sampling the color. Everything has been given to us. We just need to set them up. So for the style guide, we need to pick all the colors that we need to use in the project. Again, the fonts that is connected to Google. If you want to use the Google link, you see it under the style guide. But I'm not using it. We already have the local one. So why do we need to start doing that? So yeah, so these are the colors that we need. So we have all these colors. So pick them up, convert it to a proper variable. And as you can see down here, can you see the link to the Google font? So if you want to connect to the Google font, this is the link. You go and get the link and you connect it instead of you doing it yourself like that. We already have the assets. You don't need to start going to Google. So we are connected already. So we don't need to do that. So this one should be light red, close, which is the error message that we're going to be using later on. So for the white, this is it. For the off-white, so we have off-white. Where are we using off-white? So we have light gray color. We have this smoky gray color. And we have this off-black color like so. These are the colors that we have in the project there. So as you can see, we have them here. So this purple, so that's what we're going to be using at that place. What is the background? This is the body. I think the body is using this light, off white or light gray. I don't know. We're going to test them. So after this, we need to select the body. The width should be 100% because the body should always full everything like that. So width should be 100%. Overflow X, even though nothing will go outside for now, but it's always good that you do all these basic settings. Minimum height should be 100 BH because we always want it to cover up the entire screen, even though the content is not up to that, but we still want it to cover up everywhere. So the background color now, I don't know which one we are to use, but I'm going to try this off-white first. So off-white, like this. Then the main, so the main is now going to be white. So the background color, I want to see whether it's relating to each other. So it's going to be white like this. Assuming it's coming from Figma, we don't need to do this. We're going to see what is there directly. Yeah, and I think I got it. Let me check the stuff. Yeah, that's the color that is there. So the background is off-white. So let me continue. The next thing we need to do here, we need to have padding because of small screen. So we need to have padding. And I'm going to use 2 rem for top and bottom. Left and right should be 1 rem like this. Why do I need this? I don't want the content that this thing, yeah, as you can see, leave this space around everything like that. Not that it's just jam-packed. Without this padding, the box just jam-packed with everything. You can do it from this main too, but the top and bottom is not going to be arranged the way I want it on the mobile because there won't be any space. So that's why I'm adding this. Again, we want to display it as flex so that we can move the main to the center because the stuff we are building, you can see everything is at the center of the page, whether on mobile or on desktop. As you can see here, there is padding, a little bit of padding, just little stuff. That's why I use 1 area here. So display flex. Then AIC, align item should be center. and justify content should be center, so that our content inside the parent, which is that main, is going to be the center like this. So what is the width of this box? On small screen is just this around 95%, and on a big screen I don't think it's going more than 600 or so. So you can talk to that one. So the width by default is going to be 95% for the maximum width that it must go to, because if I don't specify this on a big screen, it just keeps getting wide, as you can see, wide and wide and wide and getting wider there. So we need to apply max width, because on a big screen we don't want it to go around that 500. I think 500 should be okay. It's not 500 is even too much, or because I increase my screen, let me return it back to 100% and see what is going on. All right, I think it's still big. 500 is too much, so it can be 420 like this. So max width, yeah, so it's perfect like this, because it's supposed to be this tiny box inside the container. So the weight by default on a screen that is less than 420 is going to um take 95. Then once it go more than 420 width for the screen, then it will stop at that place. So if I go to a mobile screen now, you see that it's using 95%, because the 95% here is not up to 420, so it will pick 95%. But now if you go to tablet, because tablet is 768, it's bigger than 420, so it will not be using that 95% again. It will be using that 420, which limits the box based on the screen that you are working on. It will never leave that 420, no matter the screen size that you have there, if it is bigger than 420, so that we can have the same UI that we have here like this. So what else do we need to do? We need to curve the edge, and we need to apply some gradient there, and that's where we apply some padding. So for the form, I will finish this down one, the down one here, I will finish it. But for this round and stuff, it's going to be next class there like that, because I need to join another class I did not have 2 years ago. So yeah, before I call it a day, so what do we need to do? We need to apply the basic setting that we have there. So here we need to apply the border radius. And where is the border radius? If you look at it, the border radius here and here are the same. The one that is not the same is the bottom one down here. And don't forget, when you want to apply the border radius, you can apply them at once, or you can specify each side that you want to change. So here now, I can just say border radius is going to be this 0.5. But for this particular bottom right, I want it to have this round edge. So by default, I'm going to talk to all of them to just have a border radius of 0.5 rem here, which is 8 pixels. So you see that all of them will have the same edge. Let me increase this thing again. Let me remove it from this stuff. So let me increase. Yeah, so as you can see, the edge, everything is curved. But this down one here, the one of this bottom right, is not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be more than what I pass here. So how do I do what's going on? Something is missing. So this one down here now, we need to talk to the bottom right here. So here we're going to have the border bottom. Where are you? Yeah, so the bottom right radius. And what did I want to use here? I think it's around these 2 rem. Once saved, it's even more than that. Let me reduce this thing so that it can show it's more than that. So I think let me see 4. Yeah, so now it's okay. By default, all of them are going to have this 0.5. Then we are changing the one for the right side to this 4 rem. Is it making sense on the mobile? Let me go to mobile views. Yeah, it's okay. It looks nice. So close it. Then the other thing I want to work on is the padding, because you should have a space inside the box. Everything just jump back to the edge of the box. Yeah, now we have spacing. So we need to display this thing as flex. And once I display it as flex, it moves them side by side. This is not what we want. They are still supposed to be on top of each other, but there's going to be a gap. So we need to change the flex direction. So So flex direction should be colon and the gap should be around this 2 rem, so that the spacing between the form and the text here and the 2 rem is too much. So 1.25 should be okay. That's 20 pixels. By the time I style all this one, it's going to look nice. Then the H2 that we have here, this is on the font size. Let me increase the font size. By default, the H2 is using 24 pixels, but I want it to use this 3 rem, which is 48 pixels, which is going to make it bigger, but it's too much. So let me use 2 rem, which is 32 pixels. Yeah, so I think that 2 pixels should be okay. Let me go back to 100 and see. Nah, I don't think it is okay. Yeah, it's bigger than that. So let me increase it to 2.5, which is going to be 36. What's going on? It's 40, not 36. So save. As you can see, it's coming big. Let me go to 75, 2.75, 2.875. That's 46. Yeah, I think it is okay like this. So what do we need to do? I said, why didn't the text change? I did not change the text. So this one's supposed to be months, and this one's supposed to be days. So save, and now we have it. So inside it, we need to target them. Inside the results, we have H2. So inside it, we only have the one H2. So inside H2, we have the span. So the color of this one is going to be that our purple color, so that the dash that we have here, yeah, so they are going to change. So all the dash will change, but the other one beside it is not going to change, because we are only targeting the span. We are not targeting everything that is inside there, and that's the reason why I'm using span here, so that we can target this. And later when JavaScript change it to number, you see that it will still maintain the color that's supposed to be there like that. So that's what span is there for, so that we can have the styling. And in our next class now, we're going to focus on this section here, which is the form area. So I need to join another class. So that will be all for today. The next class will continue from where we stop by working on this form section here, like that. So that's it.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.